And here we are. We are live. Thank you everyone for joining me for another Reedsy Live, Reedsy's ongoing series of webinars, where we bring on professionals from the world of publishing to show you how to write and publish better books. My name is Martin. I'm part of the team here at Reedsy in London, and I'm very pleased to be able to welcome you to another cover critique. These are, one of my favorite things to do, where we invite authors to send in covers for books that either have just been published, yet to be published, that maybe they've made themselves, had a professional work on, had a beloved friend or family member make, and then we bring on one of Reedsy's own designers to critique them, say what works, what doesn't, how one might improve it, and to give you a better idea of how professional designers think. Really thank you everyone who sent in covers. I think by the time I sort of had my cut off, I think we had north of 600 covers, and I believe we're not going to cover them all today, otherwise I shall never again sleep. But very happy to everyone's joining. 181 people so far. Fantastic. Let's see who's on here. If you've joined us early, tell us where you're coming from. City, country, state. We've got Salem from Reno, Nevada. Is that the biggest little city in the world? Patricia, also from Reno, Nevada. Do you guys know each other? We have Darcy from Olympia, Washington. Cherry from Nottingham here in England, working as an author and illustrator in YA LGBTQI fiction. We have Betty from Norwalk. We have Susan from Huntsville, Alabama. Lakita from Montenegro. We have Lisa. Ciao tutti. Hello from Italy. Fantastic. Dasila from Las Vegas, Nevada. Nevada is representing pretty hard this time in a way that they're normally. Bazza from Uttoxeter here in the UK. I genuinely don't know what that is. I know there's an Upminster. Uttoxeter almost sounds like it should be nearby. We have Artistic Dawn from Ohio. Sword Ablaze from Dorset in the UK. We have Samantha from the UK originally, but moved to Portugal for better weather. Fantastic. Thank you all so much for joining, and thank you for everyone who sent in a cover. Even if we don't feature your cover today, I'm sure there'll be something you can learn from this presentation. Hello to Paula and Laura in California. We have Tomorrow Kiddo from Münster in Germany. Bigates Randy Bowser is here, and Ghostly Chameleon from Malta. Malta is, I imagine it's quite nice this time of year. I only know one thing about Malta, and that is the village they built for the 1981 film Popeye is still there, apparently. They built an entire seaside resort for Popeye to be in, and apparently it's still there. Although, I think it may be falling apart finally. You from Malta, you'll have to tell me. Susan from New Hampshire in the US, hoping thunderstorms don't make them lose power. Well, fingers crossed. We have Franklin, g'day from Portland, Oregon. That classic Portlandian greeting, g'day. Paul Nowicki from Raleigh, North Carolina, where it is hot. Speaking of hot, Shannon's in Hotlanta, Georgia. Laurie coming in from Cleveland, Ohio. And Patrick from Nepal. I think this is the first Nepal tune-in I've seen. So really great to see so many folks here. I know it's a bit preemptive, but if you've enjoyed any of our presentations before, please feel free to give this video a like. It'll help it sort of be seen while we live stream this. Henry Martin from Belgium with RB Rebel from Mount Vernon, Washington. Great. JT from Arkansas. I think we've seen you here before, JT. Not a Jean from Vancouver, BC. Oh, and Mr. NHNZ from New Zealand. Good morning. Thank you. Ladybug says, funny to mention Malta and Popeye. They watched the movie this past Sunday. Of course, the great Shelley Duvall just passed away, star of the Popeye film. It's if you haven't seen it, it's great. It's a really weird film with a soundtrack from Harry Nilsson, and it has an odd rhythm, and it's just like utterly charming. Anyway, it's coming to the top of the hour, so I think I'll get this thing started. This week on Reedsy Live, we're covering covers. Hello and welcome to another Reedsy Live. My name is Martin. I'm a member of the team here at Reedsy, and you've joined us for Reedsy Live, the ongoing series of webinars where we bring on professionals from the world of publishing to show you how to write and publish better books. And today sees the return of our beloved cover critique feature. in which authors and writers like you submit book covers, and we bring on one of our professional designers to critique it, provide tips and suggestions for how to improve it, or perhaps tips and suggestions for how to maybe start again. Really, really happy that everyone's able to join us here today, and if you're watching in the future, thank you too for that. We had over 600 people submit covers to take part in this. We're only going to be able to scratch the surface, but even if your cover isn't picked, I'm sure there's plenty you'll be able to learn from this. So I could blather a lot longer, but I reckon we've got a lot to get through, so might as well get things started with my guest, who is a book designer with 3 decades of experience bringing authors' visions to life. His clients have included Big 5 publishers like St. Martin's Press and Penguin Random House, where he served as an art director, overseeing over 350 books a year. You can now find him on Reedsy, where he is available to work on your next book. Please welcome Glen Edelstein. Glen, how you doing?
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Glen, thank you for joining
So I'm
us.
very
I know
excited.
you're normally based in New York, but I hear that you're in Mexico right now.
I'm in Mexico right now. My wife is from Mexico, so we spend a good part of the year down here and back in New York, back and forth, back and forth. So right now we're in Mexico enjoying the beautiful weather of Ensenada, Mexico, which is in the 70s today. In the night, it goes down into the 60s, and that's pretty normal. So that's pretty much most of the year. So I can't complain. New York is suffering with 90-degree plus weather for weeks and weeks right now. So
Yeah, like when I hear
it's
Mexico, I imagine maybe it's the yellow filter they put on all the TV shows. I imagine it's hot all year round, but that's quite nice.
It's on the Pacific coast, so it gets the cool ocean weather, like San Diego and California. The weather's very similar as California. It's like in Baja California. But
Okay, nice.
so I've been doing this a long time, loving it all these years. Art director, designer, started off, went to art high school in Manhattan, went to an art college in Manhattan School of Visual Arts, and then found my way into publishing. I've been doing that for quite some time. Love every bit of it. Um, and I have lots of knowledge and experience from all the years I've been doing it, starting off with, simple college textbooks where I started and ended up doing trade book covers and book interiors. These are just a couple sampling of book covers that are my favorites, and they're my favorites because they invoke attention. They cause people to stop and look at that, and that's really important with a cover, which is you want to look at a cover and say, what is this book about? You want it to stop you. That's the issue about books in general, which is most people, you go online, you walk into a bookstore, 5 seconds, that's it. If you don't see the book you want in 5 seconds, you're going to walk away. If that book doesn't grab your attention within 5 seconds, you're going to walk away. And the job as a book designer is to get that attention from somebody right away, or you haven't done your job. It's very clear that when someone says, oh, this book looks interesting, that they take the book, they turn it over and read the back of the book, the summary, the biography. And that's another part of design, which is you don't want to put too much information on your back cover. You want to keep it simple. You want to write a summary that grabs someone to say, you know what, I think I want to buy this book. Whether you go into a bookstore or whether you go online to Amazon or wherever, Barnes and Noble, whatever the bookstore is online near you, um, you want something that's going to say, within a matter of a minute or so, say, I want to buy this book. That's key to design. That's a key to the designer, and that's a key to selling your book. And those books that I put there are books that immediately grab your attention and want to make you read more. So I would love to just see your books, and I'll give you my concepts and ideas about how to improve them.
Cool. All right, let's hit up the first one, and we're going to start with a children's picture book. This is Jeremy and the Beetle Takedown by Solana Brown. This has been created by a professional designer, not found through Reedsy. What are your first impressions, Glenn?
My first impressions is this book cover is way too busy. There is a lot going on, and my eye doesn't know where to look. I see Jeremy and the Beetle Takedown, and then I see these three children. I first, how many kids are in this? Oh, I see four. Oh, I see three. And then I see written by and illustrated in a dark color, which makes it even very hard to see about it. This dark blue against a dark green. My whole issue with this is it's really not telling me anything about the story. It says Jeremy and the Beetle Takedown. I don't know what that means. I see a boy with a net in his hands trying to catch a beetle, I guess. And what are the other two? Are they just playing? Because it's not connecting. I don't think it's connecting to the story itself. And again, my eye doesn't know where to focus. I'm not sure where I should be looking. I go to the title, but then I question again what's actually happening here. So what I would have done is I probably would have taken two people out of the picture and I would have simplified it more and make the title, see, the title is squished together. So it makes it even difficult to read, Jeremy and the Beetle Takedown. So I might even put Beetle Takedown on one line, or Jeremy and the on one line and Beetle Takedown on another line, just to make it more open and readable. Um, Other than that, I mean, it's the illustrator's illustration is okay. I don't think it's. I think what happens with the illustration is that the people sort of blend into the background. So especially the two people, the girl sitting on top of the boy's shoulders, I think that's what's happening, or on his back. Um, it's hard to see exactly what's going on. And again, my real issue is from what's going on in this picture, I don't know what the story is about. And that's really key to book covers, is that you get a sense right away about what the story is. Everyone's smiling, having a good time, but I have no idea what does beetle takedown mean? Are they going to kill the beetle? Are they just catching them? Takedown is a confusing word because takedowns could be assumed as being killing. So it's very hard to say takedown is like takedown like in a football game, taking down, who has the ball. So yeah, that's my
Yeah,
thoughts.
it feels like, yeah, especially for a kids' book where there tends to be like one particular game happening in a story, where it's like, oh, is Jeremy going to be going through the forest, encountering loads and loads of different bugs? Is the entire thing a chase of a beetle? Yeah, like the best covers are the ones that sort of encapsulate that quickly. One of the things I see often with picture book covers, because I think you have the illustrators maybe working on it, maybe not in tandem with the designer. And so, like with this one, I'll often see like them just trying to smuggle in the written by and the illustrated by credits somewhere on the page where it fits. It doesn't seem like it's been illustrated with actually being a cover in mind.
And that's a good point also, because the written by and the illustrated by literally looked like they were like, oh, where are we going to put it now? And that's one thing that's really important, especially working on a children's book, is planning in advance where things are going to go. So I don't know what the inside of the book looks like, but it's really important that the illustrator has left space for text, and that you're not going to sit there and have to play with the text to try to make the text fit on the background somehow. But even like where I see written by, it's sort of touching the edge of the flowers. And Beatrice Guvella, her name is touching the edge of the green flowers too. And that's sort of like saying, oh, let's just make it fit.
Yeah.
It's like the type was just sort of thrown in there, and oh, it's all right. So it's touching. There should have been more thought into positioning. Even that, even if that was your space, there should have been more thought in positioning. So the type is not touching the edge of anything. So again, they sort of look like they were thrown in the end. Oh, we have some bushes here. Let's put the names in.
Cool. All right. Are we ready for the next one?
Hmm.
Okay, and this one is called No Sympathy by Ewan Dooley, and this is urban fantasy but with a literary twist, set in sort of a magical underworld underneath Berlin, I believe. Yeah, what do you make of this?
So my first reaction is the type itself, because the type is doesn't make sense to the story. And sometimes what happens with type is that you think in your mind, I'm going to use a font that's going to tell somewhat about what the history is of this story here. So, but in this case, I have no connection to what this type actually means, nor do I understand the connection to the story. I read the little bio, the little summary of what the story is about, but the type doesn't connect to what the story says. The other thing is about the imagery. Sure, it's a really beautiful painting, and I see a guy with a guitar, but it's not, again, what you're telling me based on what the summary is. I don't get the imagery connecting to what the story is about. And what's really, really important is that when you're choosing an image, to for your cover, you're choosing an image that basically, without giving away, gives you so much information that you want to read the book. And this is there's a guy playing a guitar on what looks like a rainy night, and that's all I could. And he's alone, but it's not enough to grab my attention and say, "What is this story about?" It looks like, a beautifully artistic painting, but it doesn't say anything about the story. And connecting the word no sympathy to a man sitting in the dark playing a guitar, and not to insult it, but there is no connection between the two. So it's really important when you're designing a cover that your typography and imagery work together, that there is a balance between the two. And again, I'll say what I said before which is when you're looking to create what font you want to use, you have to create a font. This is too decorative, this font, because this font is trying to tell me something about a story, but I don't get it. I don't get the connection between the font and the imagery. And also placement is, not to be insulting, is bad because you have a lot of space sitting on top and a lot of space on the bottom. And I think to myself, why didn't you work with a larger illustration? And then you have the type closer to the top. And then you also could have done things like enlarging the word no and then have sympathy smaller, so it pops even more. And your name, down lower to the bottom. Right now you're centering on the imagery and type, and you have all this extra space of darkness on the top and the bottom, which is, at this point I look at it and you could have made the cover a square as opposed to a rectangle. Again, the illustration's a really beautiful illustration, but I'm not sure how it connects to the story. And again, as I said, the key thing about the illustration or photo or whatever you use, that there's something in there that connects to the story, and the reader says, what is this book about? I want to know more. And unfortunately, this isn't doing this for me. I'm saying, I don't get it, and then I want to move on. But I don't mean to insult you, but I'm just saying I think it's better to think, how do I grab someone's attention, not what you might say is a beautiful cover. Do you want to add anything to that? Anybody there?
Oh, sorry, I had myself on mute. Yeah, there's something about that type because with a lot of sort of author-created or self-made covers, I guess it's always hard to get that contrast between the type and the image. And the thing I normally see is either a lot of drop shadow or outlining, or maybe sort of glowing from behind. Like these are the sort of like telltale signs of like self-made covers sometimes. Like, how do you approach laying text onto a cover in a way that makes it feel like it's organic and part of it?
Yeah, I mean that's an issue, which is key, because if you're dealing with an image that has dark and light backgrounds, you have to find a way to make the type readable against dark and light. I mean, in this case, they actually made a good decision by using this. But again, I see the shadowy background behind the type in order to be able to read the type. So again, if the type was moved up into the darkness, you wouldn't actually
Mm.
need to put any like shadowing behind the image. So in a case like this, my honest opinion is I would not have used this font to begin with. And and I would have used the page more. Like it's being way you have this illustration and you're not using all the space that you could be using,
Yeah.
and it's now merging into the actual image itself when it's not necessary.
All right. Cool. Thank you, Ewan, for sending that one in. Our next one is also fiction. It is titled Wild Child, sent in by the author Dustin Hudson. Yeah, this is it's
So
quite a striking illustration.
the illustration is beautiful. I have to say, the illustration is beautiful. I have no understanding of what this book is about. I don't connect what Wild Child has anything to do with a hare or rabbit made out of twigs or wood. I mean, I would say it's interesting enough to possibly pick up the book and look at it, but to me, there's no connection between Wild Child and the rabbit itself. So I understand, why should I pick up this book? The title doesn't connect to the rabbit. And of course, I would imagine that this rabbit image plays a big role in the story itself, but it doesn't connect to the point, the title, because I always feel when I'm designing a cover, I'm thinking about what the title of the book is saying at the same time I'm thinking about imagery that connects to the title. And I see the word wild child and I see a rabbit and I'm thinking, I don't understand it. The other thing about this is the font itself. I see a font like this as simple fiction, almost towards children. I see a font like this as something that, for a book that's maybe on the smaller size of a standard cover. This book comes across almost in the realm of a poetry like book based on the font that you chose. It's very simple, very, even tempered, not strong. The illustration is beautiful. Honestly, the illustration is a beautiful illustration, but it's probably way too big also. But I wouldn't have used this illustration as well. Um, I don't like the idea that the word child suddenly hits the ear of the rabbit because LD gets hard to read. And in this case, if you really were sure that this is the image you wanted, you'd make the image slightly smaller so you could read the type. As I said, this comes across as a poetry book. It doesn't come across as mystical. Um, I don't see the belonging of sacrifice or redemption or anything related to what Jack confronts in the story. In this, there's no message on the cover. Again, I'm not insulting the illustration. It's a beautiful illustration, but maybe it's the wrong illustration. And again, based on what you're telling me, what the story's about, it doesn't connect to what the story. It doesn't fit the genre as well. Any other
Emma here
thoughts?
says, people interested in magic will understand the significance of the hair. That market would recognize it. I would dare say that that market might be too small.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know the market as well at that well, so I can't respond to that. But I will say, if that hair is a connection to the market, yeah, I don't know how large your market is and who you're reaching out to. If you're reaching only out for that market, God bless. But again, if you want to change, I would change the way the type fits on top of it and pull it off of the rabbit's ears. So that's new to me because I don't know anything about the market. And does the hair, even the market itself, does the hair itself connect to the title Wild Child? Because I think Wild Child, my imagery is very different than the hair. Any
Uh,
other comments?
no, I think that pretty much covers it. Yep, everyone has sort of related to maybe Alice in Wonderland. Yeah, I think the thing is everyone has their own theories and speculations, and that might be, as you say, the problem with it. It asks a question, but if you spend more than 3 seconds on it, you might not necessarily have an answer to it. So it is piquing the potential reader's interest, but I guess unless it pays off in some way, it might not work as that sort of incentive to buy.
Right. And then again, it goes back to the point that I said a moment ago, which is 5 seconds. That's it. If it doesn't get me within 5 seconds, I'm going to move on. And
Um,
being the fact, go ahead.
Sorry, Woodland Lady here saying stating just fiction doesn't say where it will be categorized. Actually, I think it's very specifically tells you exactly where it's going to be shelved. Like most bookstores will have that fiction section where if it's not science fiction and fantasy, if it's not crime, if it's not YA, it all goes into the same shelf.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly. So this is good in fiction, and people aren't going to understand it. Right.
cool. Let's move on to the next one. Plenty to cover here. This one's called Wintering Over by Victoria Farr Brown. It is also fiction, but I believe it was also mentioned that it may have some maybe women's fiction, which is a category some other editors don't love, but I think it's pretty. It is a very distinct genre of itself, and that I think sometimes does have a space in the bookshop. What are your immediate impressions of this?
My immediate impressions is really bad photoshopping. My first reaction is really bad photoshopping. If you go close up onto this book, you could see around the people's heads how poorly the photoshopping was done, and also how different the color that they are in the background is. And my first reaction is that this book looks self-published. It doesn't look like it was done by a professional. It looks like it was done by somebody who doesn't really know too much about graphic design, and not as an insult, because I know you as an author are trying to get the best you can out of your covers, but in this case, those two people popping out there, I would never use photos of people in a cover unless it was a biography. I would use a painting of somebody, I wouldn't use a photo, and I wouldn't be so obvious on what they look like, because what happens is when you see a photo of what someone looks like, you've already made a judgment in your mind about how they're going to act, how they're going to behave, and what they look like through the whole time. It's better to discover what they look like through the story as opposed to just throwing it in your face as to, here I am, this is us. I've only used photos of people, again, in biographies, and the only biographies that I've used people's faces is people who are well known. Because if you're not well known, why is your face there? Because no one's going to know who you are to begin with. And again, the photos of these two people are like, who are you people, and what do you have to do with the story? And it pulls me away right away because I think self-published. The other thing is about the title itself. It's got this glowing around it. What's happening is here, there's too much going on. I see a violin, I see a palette with paintbrushes, I see the house in the background, I see this font wintering over, which is very condensed to begin with, hard to read because there's some kind of glow around it. You have a competition in the fonts. There's three different kinds of fonts here, or two different fonts. Normally, when you're working on a book cover, the most you want to deal with is two fonts, but I think there's three here. And again, the fact that there's this glowing, wintering over, there's no reason for it. I don't even understand why it's glowing. This cover doesn't tell me anything about the book. I don't know if these people, are they married? Are they divorced? Are they separated? Why are they back to back with each other? The imagery of the farmhouse in the back. I mean, if I was redoing this cover, I'd take away the violin, I'd take away the paintbrush, I would take away these dark green bars sitting at the top and sitting at the bottom, and I might just come up with a different kind of. It's Martha's Vineyard, so that's on an island off of Massachusetts. You might even want to put the ocean somewhere into this picture, considering it's in Martha's Vineyard, and take the people away, take them out of the picture, and put something more substantial, symbolic of the story into the photo instead of all these things that. And then again, with the photoshopping, it's really bad because you have these people very clear in the front, very sharp, and it's obvious that they were put into this background against the house because there's no tint of the color of the background on them whatsoever.
Like, yeah, mentioning like showing the characters there on the front cover. I think the other exception is in a lot of romance subgenres. I think you will see models on the front, your sort of Fabios and whatnot. Um, in other covers I've seen where they do have photography and models, I think the thing that makes it, I think the thing you say is like as soon as they see them there, it's like, oh, I guess you've cast this in my head for me. I can't unsee who these people are. But you'll often see like photographs, but you never really see their eyes. I think if you just don't put in their eyes, that sometimes can leave enough for your reader to be able to insert themselves into the character, perhaps.
Right, and also adding on to that, when I do put people on covers, they're sort of unseen. So you don't see too much. There's people sitting there, and you could say, "Oh, this is a man and this is a woman," but there's not enough about them which makes me see their faces. I want to keep them hidden and let the story build upon them. So, if you were going to use people on the cover, you might even turn them around. So you could see that it's a man and woman, but they're not facing each other because, again, I made a judgment about who they are just by looking at the photos. Right.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Victoria, for sending that in. Hope it's been useful. Oh, some people in the comments have pointed out that Martha's Vineyard has an E in it, so you may want to.
Oh, there you go.
Cool. Next one here is historical fiction, The Rivers Run Deep by Tim Holden, which I think looks to be set during Napoleonic era, perhaps. Yep, before the American War of Independence. Yeah, what sort of jumps at you first with this one?
Too much going on. My first reaction is way too much going on. My eye doesn't know where to go. And I'm looking at the title, Rivers Run Deep, and then I pop my eyes down. I see this river, and I see two flags, and I see someone in the river. I don't know what and know what's going on here. It says New World Saga Book One, Tim Holden. I see these dark shadows behind the words river run deep, and that's sort of at this point in design, we don't do that anymore. We avoid that. And I see what looks like a pirate's hat, but I'm not sure what that is, or is it a captain's hat from a boat? I sort of get the sense that you're trying to show an era here, but it's not coming across about what era you're trying to say. I see the hat, and the hat sort of says to me, oh, maybe it's 1800s or 1700. I don't know. It doesn't say it. And then, key to this, unfortunate, is if you don't know where the flags are from, you're not going to get the story. So if you don't make a connection to the flag, so you say, what do the flags have to do with the story? What countries are those? So you take myself, for example, I have to read the bio or I have to read the summary and the back cover to know what those flags are because frankly, my immediate reaction is I don't know what country these are for. I don't know what they are. And if I didn't read a summary, I wouldn't do it. And but the problem with that is this cover isn't making me want to turn the book over and read the summary because immediately I'm lost as to what the story is about by seeing the two flags. And Rivers Run Deep, I sort of get the title, but I think you need a better subtitle. It just says the New World Saga Book One. What is the series New World Saga about? Because you need something, you need a tagline or something for book one. So we, the reader, say, oh, this book is about these things. As I said earlier, it's key when you're creating a cover that there's some connection between the type and the imagery. And right now I see a sort of quote older fashioned font being used with an illustration that looks more modern. If you wanted to have this take place, 17, 1800s, you might have done an illustration that had the look of that period of time. So that's my basic thoughts.
So one thing I would say, Tim, is that from sort of a self-publishing perspective, if this is the first part of an intended two, three, four book saga, if you've yet to write and release those other ones, sometimes it may be best to not mention that this is book one of a saga. A lot of readers will want to, read a book that they feel is sort of self-contained. They don't want to sort of start picking something up thinking like, oh, this is going to be maybe a 4 book commitment or something. So once you get book 2 or 3 and you're re-releasing it, then you can sort of put that stuff back on. But from a way of sort of selling it, I would certainly think maybe to take that bit off. It's just like another element that people won't have to sort of think about because, yeah, as you say, Glenn, there's a lot going on in there. I'm noticing between Run and Deep, there's a river there as well. So there's a lot of small added
Oh, I didn't agree.
details that is just easy to miss. So there's too many elements maybe going on.
Right. And that's again, I mean, I don't have a problem with the font that you use for rivers run deep, but again, I didn't see that river running off the word run until now. And that is sort of even complicates it a little bit more only because I'm questioning what's going on there. Like, oh,
Mm.
what is that? Is that, oh, that must be the river. Again, as I said earlier, there's the 5 seconds. If it's too confusing, I'm going to move on. And that's unfortunately what's happening. There's just too much going on, and I wouldn't pick up the book.
Cool. All right. Let's move on to our next one. We've got our first memoir. This one's called Ocean Beneath the Sea by Morgan Lake. Also professionally designed, not from Reedsy. A lot of green.
Right. So here's the thing. Color is really important to covers. Certain covers sell because of color. When I was an art director at Random House, issues came up where I would design something and everyone would approve it, and then it would finally get to the marketing department. The marketing people would look at me and go, oh, green isn't the color this year. People aren't buying green books. So this is something to think about when yes, this honestly is a beautiful photo, I have to say. But what's also important is you have to pay attention as to what the market is looking at the same time. So you want to look around or have your designer look around and say, this type of book, what do books look like? When I'm designing my books, I always go to the publishing websites to get a sense of what kind of books are out there, to get a sense of the market. Marketing is really important when you're putting a book cover together because you want to see what people will buy in the market. And a book like this, which is fairly beautiful, The problem is the illustration, the photo itself is so dark that I can't really tell what's going on. I like the font that you chose for Ocean Beneath the Sea. I think it's cramped. I think it's a little too close to each other. I definitely would give it some air between ocean, beneath, and the sea, and maybe go just a little bit larger, but it's not necessary. The other thing about this is what is the genre of this book? So this is like a biography, I'm guessing. Yeah, it's a bio.
Yeah, it's a memoir.
So it's a memoir. So I think it's not saying enough about it being a memoir because I look at it and I see poetry book. I don't see memoir. I don't see, it doesn't tell me a story about you. It doesn't tell me a story. Um, Again, the title could mean something, Ocean Beneath the Sea, but at the same time, I can't tell. I guess this is the ocean or is this a forest? There's a lot. It's a beautiful photo, but I'm not sure if this is underwater or is this above water, and how does this connect to the title? Again, like I said, the font that you chose is really beautiful. The spacing needs to be open a little bit more. There really isn't much to say, but again, I think the background's too dark, and I don't make the connection between the title and the imagery itself. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, Adventures with Time has a question. You mentioned about looking to see what's working right now. Does that mean a cover which works this year may not work in a couple of years?
Absolutely. There's a constant audience change as to what books look like. Generations look at difference much differently. So you have to really pay attention. Again, when I go back to my days at Random House, I was there for 17 years. And over the 17 years at Random House, book cover styles changed dramatically over a period of 17 years. And it's not because designers were just saying, oh, let me try something new. The designers were going, our sales are dropping, or our publishers saying, your sales are dropping on this look type books. It's time to put some change into the book and reach out to the audience. And so in these meetings we used to have, these with the publisher, the editor, the designers, the sales force, et cetera, we'd sit in these, season meetings because books came out by season, and we'd go through the list, and we depended upon the sales force as the people to tell us what's going on out there. And the sales force would come in saying, green is not big this year. No one's buying green books. So even though everyone else has approved along the way, you suddenly get it back saying, okay, now I need to change the color of this book. But that's just the way it is. And it comes down to sales, and it just comes down to taste. And in a book like this, because of its simplicity, it's really important to pay attention to other books in the same genre and see if this kind of book is going to actually sell. And as I said before, that's why I always go when I start a new project, I go to the big publishers' websites and I take a look at what's going on because it gets me in tune as to what's happening in terms of sales.
Cool. I'm having a look at some of the comments. Appreciate everyone who has sent in their covers. I know sometimes this may be a bit savage. You have spent a lot of time and perhaps money and resources into making these, but we're not really here to just sort of give everyone pats on the back, sadly. We have picked covers that have a lot to sort of discuss with them, and yeah, so we have picked ones with a lot to sort of talk about. If you want examples of good covers, you can go to your bookshop and pick those up, but we're sort of looking at ones that I think have potential and have ones that can be tweaked a little bit. So yeah, if yours gets picked, oh dear, I think my camera might be going busto in a second. Anyway, let's move on to the next one, Glenn. Let's go back here. All right, this is Keep Cool Memphis by Sid Hunter, a thriller.
Okay, so my first reaction is, where is this man standing? Is he standing in the middle of the road? And why is he looking at the Eiffel Tower? And the Eiffel Tower is in the wrong place. And what does it have to do with Keep Cool Memphis? I don't really get the point of, I understand that there's a school trip that goes from Memphis, I'm assuming, to Paris. But it talks about a hidden identity disappears, sending them on a collision course with ruthless cartel. Memphis is thrust into a world of danger and deception, racing against time to uncover truth and rescue. And this doesn't say anything about that. All I see is this man looking at the Eiffel Tower. I also see a problem with the title, which is Keep Cool, yes. So this book is sitting in the category of mystery suspense. And Memphis, the word Memphis itself is definitely not something that would you see on a mystery suspense title. It also is very low. I don't quite understanding why you have all the space between the word keep cool and the quote that's sitting above. So you could shift that thing up. But again, I see a man, which is good. So there's a positive thing here. I see a person staring at the Eiffel Tower. So there's this person who's in Paris, but it doesn't connect to the story that says sending him on a collision of a ruthless cartel. I don't see that. I see someone looking at sunset or in the dark at the Eiffel Tower. I don't get any sense of what the story's about. I see that it's a big person that's standing there and in a position that's not telling me that this is dramatic or anything like that. And then you have this font, Memphis, which takes away from the whole sense of danger. There, it doesn't give danger. It starts to, and then they put Memphis in here. The last thing really comes down to color, which is, I would have just kept everything white, to be honest with you. But then you have three different tones of color here. You have Memphis in one yellow, and then you have Sid Hunter in another color, and Keep Cool in white. And it's distracting. And it also gets distracting with the quote at the top, where my eye goes straight to the author's name and I don't read the quote itself. And in regards to the quote itself, it's so condensed, I can't read it. And even if I was holding the book in my hand, I'd be squinting to try to read it. And I sort of get the reason why, because Keep Cool is in a condensed sans serif font. But Sid Hunter, it's like there's too many styles going on with the fonts here. And again, the imagery itself, although in some cases is quite beautiful, it doesn't tell me anything about the story. So if I was doing this cover, I'd get closer instead of that. You could see that it's the Eiffel Tower, but closer. But I'd also give some more sense of danger, which there's not enough showing here. All I see is it's darkness, it's not night, and there's a person sort of standing, staring at the Eiffel Tower. I read
Yeah,
that Memphis is thrust into all the danger and deception, racing against time to uncover the truth and rescue her. It doesn't say that from the cover. I don't
because
read it. So,
it is
go
both.
ahead.
I think like a high school adventure, but in a sort of visual style that is very much Jack Reacher. That is, yeah, those James Patterson books. So this like perfectly falls in that. I think it like is very much. It will indicate to the reader this is sort of like a Jack Reacher book. This is sort of like a James Patterson book, which certainly in self publishing is something that's I think really makes a difference. Like if people could just instantly tell what genre it belongs to. I'm just wondering whether the book itself will appeal to the sort of folks who are reading the Reacher books. If they pick it up and then see, oh, it's about a high school kid, is that something that would appeal to them? Or maybe this is something that, yeah, the high school kids and younger readers would absolutely love. I don't know the market well enough there. Um,
I sense from looking at it that there'll be a confusion because if I was walking into the bookstore, I might pick up the book, but at the same time, I would and turn it over. I would be like, I don't get it. Right away, I would pick it up and say, I don't get the connection between the illustration and the story itself. And oh, this is a younger audience. I'm not interested in this. I want to know, something for my age. So I think there is a confusion going on there. And I sort of understand the concept of why you chose a different font from Memphis because you're not saying it's the name of a city, you're saying it's uh, a name. But at the same time, I don't know that from looking at it. You know what I mean? To me,
yeah.
it almost looks like a decorative feature.
Uh, cool. At this point, I was maybe thinking about having a quick talk about like your process. Like, you know, what is your way of working with the client to design a cover that works? Because I think we've seen here like you can sort of know what you like, you can sort of have a good experience and know the sort of books within your genre, but making something that looks professional and achieves everything that you need a cover to do can be a bit tough. What was your way of working with clients?
So working with independent clients is much different than working with clients who are working with publishers. So working with independents, I generally say to the author, okay, we're a team, or we work together on this. We're not working alone. And while we're working on this process, if I have my opinions, I'm going to share it with you. And at the same time, if you have your opinions, you're going to share it with me, whether we agree or disagree. And that's important as a team effort that we do that. At the same time, I ask all my clients to provide to me 5 book covers in the genre that they love and 5 book covers in the same genre that they don't like, with the little descriptions as to why they like and don't like it. That's homework I give. And the reason for that is it gives me a sense at the start of the project about what the author's looking for. But at the same time, I'll say to an author like, I really don't like your ideas, and here's my reasons why. You could do it better. But most of the time, we come to an agreement as to what we like. And then when I'm finally working on designs, sometimes I will actually, with a pencil, do some rough sketches, take pictures of it, and just send it off to the author and saying, "Hey, what do you think? This is my rough idea." And then there's some back and forth. And this is still before I've actually started putting a physical cover together. This is just some concepts I came up, or imagery. I might just go online and find some images. Hey, I was thinking about this kind of image for the cover. What do you think, et cetera, et cetera. And most of the time we come up with something that we're both happy with. Of course, there's occasions where I'm not happy with the decision, but ultimately I will create a professional, good looking cover, um, regardless of the ultimate decision for the cover. But it's always been a team effort, always, and the author knows that we're doing this together. So that's why there's a lot of conversation back and forth during the process. And I do it, as phone calls, text messages, you name it, because it's faster to get responses, especially by text messages and things like that. So yeah.
Like when you first started off, were they still sending letters and stuff, and you had to wait for like a week for things to turn around?
Yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago, thankfully. That's why it's like, hey, here's my phone number. Why don't we talk about this?
Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
Send me an email.
cool. All right, let's hit up the next one. We have another non-fiction one here, "Dealing with Toxic Stress in Children" by Gail Brown MacDonald, although the credited author here is Jonathan Ross. Um, just to let you know, Jonathan Ross is quite a famous TV presenter here in the UK, so that might um, impact sales over here if that's was a consideration. So this one is like fairly simple, but it does have like quite an evocative illustration in the center of it.
So my reaction mostly comes down to the font that was used, because Adobe fonts or Word fonts, they have their own fonts already built in, and this looks like one of those fonts that's already there. And so it doesn't really give any attention to what the story's about. Dealing with toxic stress in children, Jonathan Ross. If Jonathan Ross is so more well known, I probably would have played up his name, and I might have switched the location where his name was sitting on top, and dealing with toxic stress in children went on the bottom. The other thing with the illustration is I like the illustration, but I'm not getting toxic stress from it. I don't, in fact, I question the fact of, is this a child? I see a person sort of squeezing their legs, seeing that they're dealing with some kind of stress, but it doesn't tell me enough in general about what that person's going through. And I think maybe if you played up their eyes a little bit more, saddened eyes might have done a little bit better, because it doesn't say that to me, or even like there's like red in the face to show stress, and it doesn't it doesn't grab me enough. It also, the green pants against the purple background, the pants are sort of getting lost. So if you see this quickly online, you don't see pants, you see head, shirt, and feet, and maybe a little bit of a hand. So I think the illustration color needs to be adjusted, and maybe a saddened face needs to grow a little bit more. I don't really have too much of a background problem with the background, only that it sort of competes with the illustration itself. And lastly, I would definitely change the font, because the font is a very dated, overused font that should not be on book covers. And as I said before, I think Jonathan Ross's name should be on top in the title. Like I would shift the position of the illustration so you have more space on the bottom for the title and his name on top.
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm 100% certain this isn't the Jonathan Ross, the talk show host in the UK, but
Oh,
just
it's
a
not.
nom de plume. Um, yeah, I think in nonfiction, one thing you will tend to see are subtitles that tend to go into a little bit more detail, either about the methodology or like the provenance of like the research, perhaps. Or there's been a lot of comments, folks saying this does look like an adult. I would sort of agree. I think when you're doing this sort of cartoonish style illustrations of children, their heads tend to be a bit bigger in relation to their body. This sort of is proportioned like an adult, perhaps. So this could be perhaps a found piece of illustration. Um,
Yeah.
Someone here has asked a question. Melissa asks, if you realize after the seminar that you can improve your cover, is it a good idea to change it, or is it too late? When or how should you go about changing once it's published? I guess I can sort of answer from the self-publishing side, which is it's never too late. You can, if you really wanted to, and you have the resources and time, you can change your cover every single day of your life, and it wouldn't really impact it on Amazon. You'll have a lot of people who will rebrand it, test certain covers to see exactly how much more click-through there is on Amazon or Apple Play. So it's never too late. It can give you another opportunity to re-promote it, run some different ads. Yeah. And Glenn, I guess from if you were a traditionally published author, I guess once it's hit the shelves, it might be too late.
Well, let me add to what you said because that's very interesting, which is this. So a lot of my clients, authors, do what's called advanced reading copies. And they send what they do is they'll have a limited amount of books printed and they'll send it off to clients or they'll send it off to people for reviews. But they'll also take into consideration what those reviews are. So it doesn't hurt to do what's called an advanced reading copy because then you get opinions from people who you're looking to get quotes from to tell you, like, oh, your cover's really bad. Like, I don't want to read your book because your cover's really bad. And advanced reading copies can be something that's physically printed, or nowadays what they do is they'll put a cover onto a PDF of the interior and the PDF of the back cover at the end, and then they send it out and they get that off to clients or they get that off to people they want to review it. So that's a good way. You save some money right from the beginning because you're getting people to read it and give you a sense as to what, is my cover working? Is it not working? I don't think it's good to take one of your covers and start sharing it with your friends, saying, "Hey, oh, I spoke to three of my friends and they like the cover." Because what happens is you're going to get people who don't know the subject, and they're going to base it on their personal opinion without knowing anything about what the book is about.
Yeah.
So it's really important that you're sending it out to people who understand the subject and get a sense of what they have to say about the book. So again, when you're self-publishing, yeah, you could change a cover every single day. And it's never too late when you're self-publishing. In professional publishing, 6 months, you're going to have to deal with the cover. And then when you go to the trade paperback from the hardcover, then you're going to have to, then you could change the cover, which happens most of the time anyway.
Cool. I'm going to skip through a couple of the ones that sort of are in genres we've already done, and go to this one, The Derailing of Douglas Jones by Matt Stremple, which feels like it belongs in this sort of cozy mystery space, considering it's about a risk-averse station master in a small regional town. This is perfect cozy fodder. What are your what do you sort of what does your eye go first when you see this?
I go right to his face. I don't even read the title. I go right to his face. And my first reaction that this is a book that's funny. I don't sense that there's seriousness to this because I'm looking at his photo and I can't tell he's like questioning or is he smiling? Like I'm not quite sure what he's doing here. So my first reaction is I get the sense that this book is a comedy, I think.
Yeah,
But at the
probably.
same at the same time, I go back to the title and then I see The Derailing of Douglas Jones. Honestly, it gets a little bit hard to read because you have the and of vertical as opposed to horizontal. But I think it could work probably if it was smaller and sort of centered in the font as opposed to sitting at the top because you have the and of so close to each other. It almost reads as one word as the of. So there's an issue with that. And at the same time, you have the derailing of Douglas Jones. The font that you chose comes across as being, suspense, mystery. and also it's competing. There's too much yellow and too much red here, and I find that it's a little bit hard to read, especially when you get to like my eye is sort of squinting because the yellow is so strong, and then you get to the name Matt Stemple, and there's this completely new font that's not used anywhere else, and I question as to why that font is actually being used. So I love the attempt because it is a good attempt, but at the same time, it's not coming across as to the genre to where you're aiming. Because again, as I said earlier, like his face, I can't. Is it a comedy? Like because the colors that you're using doesn't say the derailing of Douglas Jones. The bright orange, the bright yellow and red colors is sort of saying that this is a funny book and let's enjoy it together.
Yeah, I get the sense that this, yeah, does belong in that sort of gently humorous, um, maybe Douglas Adamy type thing is what they may be evoking there, or that sort of Thursday murder club feel. But I guess, yeah, it is going back to looking at what is there on the market and having um, a character's entire face there doesn't quite fit in. This looks like it could be a decent, like a pretty good cover if it was a comedian's memoir or if, yeah, something like that. Having a look at that, actually, the and the of are so small, and but derailing Douglas Jones is a perfectly good title as well, and I think you've sort of caught on to that, the designer here.
Yeah, and I really like the title, The Derailing of Douglas Jones, but again, as I said earlier, it's hard to read the and of. So my brain just goes derailing Douglas Jones. I don't see the derailing of Douglas Jones. I see derailing Douglas Jones. Oh, the and of. It's I don't see it. And again, I question the change of the font for your name, the author's name. So again, this is mystery, but that's a font. Again, that's why it's important to look at the genre because you wouldn't find a font like Matt Stremple in that kind of book. Again, I like the feel of it, but it doesn't say the genre. That's the thing.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Matt, for sending that one in. This next one, I think I sort of added to this because it was one of the more obviously DALI ChatGPT created ones, which I guess is a tool we're seeing used more and more all over the place. I guess, this was. It looks like there's been some photoshopping to sort of smooth it over a bit, but what is your sort of take on the sort of increased use of like generative AI these days?
Um, AI is not advanced enough to be doing illustrations. That's my first reaction because AI has a really difficult time doing faces, and that's a big problem with this cover. Is the faces are really bad. The faces in the front is pretty good, but if you look closely, the faces in the back are it looks AI generated. That's unfortunate because if you're going to use AI to create an illustration for you, you can't have it look like it's generated by AI, and that's what's happened here. And that's my issue ultimately with this cover is the illustrate it's not ready yet. AI is not ready to do this at this point. You still need to use illustrators to do an illustration that you're looking for because AI is not at the level that it should be. And I think that's several years down the road. And I have my own opinion about AI generated illustrations, which is it doesn't make me happy to see a future that illustrations are created by AI because there's so many talented illustrators out there that can do better jobs than AI, and there's someone to talk to that you can actually work with. So, but in a case like this, the whole issue for me ultimately comes down to the illustration itself, where I immediately looked at it and said, "This is AI generated." I could see
Yeah,
it because I could see the faces right away and say, "This is AI generated."
and the text is
So
garbled. And for some reason, the in this game, the coach or someone's dad has come onto court and is doing 3 pointers.
yeah, and he's also sweating, which is a very strange image to put in a book which has to do with young athletes. I don't want to see anyone sweating in a photo.
Yeah,
He's got underarm wetness, which is very strange to put in a cover because I noticed that, and I don't want to notice that on a book for kids. So there's also just too much going on. Like the kids playing, where are they looking? Like they're all looking around in different directions, and they're not looking. And that's part of the problem with AI is your descriptions in terms of what you want for illustration is difficult to write for AI. So, for example, if I use the AI, which is very rare because if I use AI, it's basically just to get an idea. I won't use it, but it's to get an idea. But the first thing I write is, I am a book designer, because they create different kinds of illustrations to the kind of person that you are. So I'll write, I am a book designer, and then I'll go through my long description of what I'm looking for. And honestly, sometimes it takes hours and hours in writing a description that it understands, to the point where a lot of times I give up because I'm not getting any sense about what it's looking for. So I find it's sometimes extremely time consuming. And again, I don't think it's advanced enough at this point where it can give me something that I'm actually looking for. In terms of the fonts itself, I mean, I'm not happy with the dark blue. Everything is dark blue. There's no contrast going on. I think it, I don't, I get it, but I don't get it. It sort of like gives me the way the word "and" is underlined, hoops and hope, young athlete's victory over cancer. I don't see it. I don't see a connection between hopes and hope and a young athlete's victory over cancer. I get the fact of who the audience is, but it doesn't come across as to the connection to the story.
All right, cool. I think we have enough time to do maybe one more quickly, and then if you're okay to stick behind Glenn, and maybe we can talk about about sort of good practices. So the final one here is from S.M. Stevens, Beautiful and Terrible Things. Fiction, I think this may fall into literary fiction or that sort of greater fiction bracket. What are your impressions here?
My impressions here is, my first reaction is, that was this book done in the 70s? Because the illustration style gives me a sense of illustrations that were done on book covers in the 70s. And the fact that there's these different kinds of illustrations going on here, you have these shadow faces, side views of people at the bottom, and at the top you have these really beautiful painting of five different people, six different people, that there's no connection between the illustration on top to the connection to the illustration on the bottom. But again, my reaction goes to the era of the book, because that type of illustration for a book cover is really not done anymore. And it does say to me, the 70s. I was born in the 70s. So I remember what they were like. I remember what book covers like. The font that you chose, Beautiful and Terrible Things, I mean, that's a nice font. I think it works. But then you get to the point of a novel by S.M. Stevens, and I can't read it because it's so light and it's against the light background. So you get this font that's hard to read. The author's name is hard to read. There also looks like there's almost a spacing issue going on, where I don't know if I would have put "and" alone on the page. I might have put it "and terrible," because my mind stops for a moment. Beautiful and terrible things. So there's a pause that's going on there. Um, so yeah, it says, a compelling portrait of modern American life in a major city with vibrant culture, breathtaking diversity, rampant social issues, enlightening and entertaining. Beautiful, terrible things remind us of friendship, power to validate, destroy, transform lives. And that's not, I see diversity, which is really beautiful, but it's not telling me anything else. I don't get the connection between the illustration and the story itself. And like I said a moment ago, the illustration, although they're quite beautiful, the painting is quite beautiful, it competes with the other form of illustration at the bottom, and it also gives it a very dated look. The colors itself give it a very dated look. It doesn't pop. The book cover doesn't pop out.
Cool. I think, yeah, a lot of people have been mentioning in the comments there, are there any covers here that Glenn liked? But I think the thing that this sort of points out is that making a professional book cover is actually really quite tough. Like, if you go and make your own, I wouldn't go to my uncle and ask him to make me, a car, because it's something that people train for. Some people have, a deep understanding of what works, not just as a design, but as a book cover. So I suppose, yeah, it is tough, but hopefully this feedback has been useful to sort of help you sort of be able to look at it through the eyes of a professional designer. I know that not everyone can afford to work with a professional designer. I say, as someone who's seen how much it costs, it's not necessarily that expensive. It is something that is, I think, a good investment. if you're serious about reaching mainstream readers. But if it is outside your budget and you have to design it yourself, Glenn, do you have any sort of general pointers that can help at least steer folks in the right direction?
The general pointer is go look at the genre at the big professional book publishers' websites. That I would say is the most important place to go because once you go there, you'll get a sense of what the book should look like. You're not going to, and you, instead of wasting the time trying to figure out on your own, oh, let me choose this font and let me choose that font because I like that font. That's not the reason why you choose a font. You choose the font because it fits into the genre and it's creates a readability in terms of how it connects to the author. So my first reaction is go to Penguin Random House, go to Simon and Schuster, go to HarperCollins, go look at your book in the same genre and get a sense of what those covers look like because once you have that, you have a good place to start. Number two is remember to connect the illustration or photo that you're going to use to the story itself. So find a section in the story that really means something and find a photo or an illustration or something that connects to that. This is what you want the reader to get from your story, and this is where you want you this is where you're going to look to create an image. So again, you're going to go to the big publishers' websites, look at what's out there, get a sense of what their books look like. Think about the fonts that they use because it'll be the same within each genre, same feel, and then it'll give you a good sense as to where to start instead of spending all the time on your own to try to figure out like what am I going to use? Oh, this is a pretty font. I'll use this. So
Uh, okay, let's see. Roxanne has a question here. So, should one expect a designer to know about colors, fonts, and when to include a series subtitle? Should one ask for input, or simply do the legwork oneself? I suppose, yeah. If I'm a first-time author looking to collaborate with the designer, yeah, you mentioned that you kind of want them to come in with a few examples of what you like, what you don't like. But for someone who may be out of their depth, would you sort of guide them through and sort of tease all those answers out of them if they don't know what they are?
so yeah, before I'm asking them to do homework, we talk about the book, etc. And I always ask for a summary or something about the book. I wish I had time to reach every book that crossed my desk, but it's impossible. So I ask for a good summary and get a sense of what the book is. And once I've read the summary, then I'll go back to them and give my advice as to where we should start. But it's always like, let's find five book covers. There's a lot of conversation in what we talk about. I don't want my authors to feel like they're in this alone, that they're doing this together, that like it's a team effort. And a lot of the authors, even many through Reedsy, say, help, I don't know what to do. And I'll say, here's your steps. Here's what we need to do together. You're not alone in this. I'm not just throwing you into the fire. We're doing this together. So a lot of times it all comes down to the team effort thing, which is you're not alone. I'm going to tell you what I need you to do. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. And most of the dirty work is going to be in my hands, not in your hands. But I need a sense of what you're looking for before I can actually do it. In terms of
Um,
font color and things like that, yes, that's my job, not your job.
I've got, I think, one more good question here. Sonia McGibbony says, "What if your book is a cross between genres? Should you pick one?" I guess the thing is, like, if you think your book is absolutely unique and there's none like it, sui generis, it probably isn't. There probably is like a book out there that you're going, fans of this book will like this book, and that sort of is your comp, I guess. Like that, I guess, comes down to more research, right?
Yeah, that's actually a tough question because how do you do this? Because you're putting the genres onto the back cover of the book. So you can't put fiction and nonfiction on the same genre on your book because it's going to go into the bookstore and the bookstore is going to go, I don't know where to put this because it's two different genres. If it's in a genre where it's a fiction, mystery, fiction, suspense or fiction, something like you sort of have a similar genre, then it's not an issue. But if you have two completely different genres, it becomes an issue for where the bookstore is going to place it. And it's going to be not just a physical bookstore, it's the same place where you have it online. Whereas if you're looking for a genre, you go to Amazon and you want to like mystery books, it's going to come up there. Oh, biography. I'm working with a client right now, and they told me, the book is really nonfiction, but there's parts in the book that is fiction. So they asked me, how do I handle that? What do I put it in? What genre will I put it in? I said, you're putting this into nonfiction, but at the same time, you're going to describe in the summary that part of this book is based on fiction to avoid, people's names or something like that. So you're letting people know that it's nonfiction, but at the same time, you're saying in your summary, yes, it's nonfiction, but parts are nonfiction are fiction because I didn't get the rights to use people's names, like in simple terms. Yeah.
Roman Edit's comments here. I imagine it helps to get another set of eyes on what you've designed too when it comes to making your own book covers. Um, there's a few things you can do. As Glenn mentioned, don't go to your friends. Like, go to people who read your books. Maybe people even work writing those similar books. Another thing you can do, especially if you haven't published yet, you can actually test it out on like Facebook ads. There are a few free courses you can have that will show you how to use Facebook ads, where you put an advert for a book. Hey, this great new book for fans of XYZ. You can pitch it at those fans of those particular books. And if nobody clicks on it, then you might be able to think, okay, maybe that design doesn't work. Maybe I need to go for a different approach. Um, have you ever had any feedback, whether it's from your indie clients or your trad pub ones, about, oh yeah, this cover's really working. It's flying off the shelf because something about it is resonating.
Most of the time, once my cover is done, I don't hear from my clients again. A lot of times they'll say, "Hey, can you send me a copy of the book? With a signed copy. I'd love to have a copy of the book." But many times I never hear from them again, or I'll reach out in a months later and say, "Hey, I'm just checking in. How did the book do?" Because that helps me in the future also. Because I like the book cover. I wanted to know that it did well because that helps me. But most of the time, I don't hear from the clients afterwards.
Cool. Some folks have been asking about how much it costs to hire a professional. At Reedsy, we're a little bit more selective, so we only sort of take the top 3 to 5% of people who apply. So most of the folks usually will have traditional publishing experience. A lot of them will have worked for those big five. I have averages, which is the actual average is about 860, and that doesn't tend to have anything specific too elaborately illustrated. Some will cost more, some will cost less, but I think like 50% of book cover collaborations on Reedsy are between that sort of $600 and $1,000 mark there. But it is the single best and most effective marketing tool you can have for your book. So there are places where you can scrimp. I would say editing is not one of them, and book cover design is not one of them either. There are certain exceptions, maybe, but if you are serious about it, then it's perhaps an investment to look into. Anyway, thank you, everyone. I really want to thank everyone who sent in a cover. Big thanks, especially to everyone who had their covers talked about here. I hope you did find it useful and wasn't too traumatizing experience. Glenn, I really want to thank you for taking time out of your day to share this great knowledge with us. Do you have any parting words for the folks there, or maybe if people are interested in working with you, what sort of projects, what sort of books you're interested in working with at this point?
So I pretty much design everything. I would say my favorite type of books are to do mystery suspense. I love to do fiction, but I also do quite a bit of nonfiction, marketing books, economic books, business books. I do quite a bit of those as well. So I pretty much will take on anything. So it's not anything that, you know, will stop me from designing your book cover. This experience was wonderful. I love sharing my knowledge with everybody and trying to give a sense of what I think is best for book covers. Again, I said I've been doing this for 30 plus years, um, and I get a sense of what is sellable and what's not sellable. And I'd like to share my experience with you and give you the best book cover um, to help sell something that you've been working on really hard for a long time. And that's the thing about book covers is I know some people putting 1, 2, 3 years, even more into a book, and they spent a lot of time. And that book cover means so much. And why waste it on something where a cover doesn't work when you can get a professional cover and get that book's chances for selling better? So
Cool.
that's the best advice I could give.
Yeah, and you can contact Glenn through his Reedsy profile, and that's in the video description. Click below, sign up for a free account, and we've got plenty of other resources that you'll find helpful. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with our next one. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Have a great day wherever you are. Cheers, Glenn. See you soon.
Thank you.